Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the Debrief live on the Blood Red YouTube channel after Liverpool beat Newcastle United 2-0 at St James's Park in a massive Premier League win for the Reds that has catapulted them towards the top four. Welcome along, everyone. As I said, we are live, so make sure you let us know your thoughts and drop us some comments in the comments section below. You join me, Patrick Smith, and I'm joined by Liverpool.com editor Addison. Matt, another win, another clean sheet, a huge win on the road for Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they were a little bit lucky in certain periods, but it was certainly a lot better in the attack. I think the comment there that says, still room for improvement, but a big result for Liverpool, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think for me, they had to go and win today, I think, to give themselves a decent opportunity of getting into the top four, but it's very much on now. They've seemed to have turned a corner, certainly in the attack. I would have liked to have seen them be a little bit more controlled and dominant in the second half against 10 men. There were still moments where they were wide open. They were 3v2 at one point. There was, opportunities really that, other than Alisson Becker getting in the way and bringing some big saves to the game, probably Newcastle should have scored at some point in that half. But certainly promising signs. It's obviously got to be put into the context of playing against 10 men for more than 3/4 of the game. It was, a tough one for Newcastle. I think they've not been in the best of form recently, and I think, possibly that we might see them drop off a little bit. But obviously, that's only going to matter if Liverpool continue to do what they do. I think, as much as I would have liked to have seen them be a little bit more controlled, the fact that they've, managed to score those goals, I'm sure will come on to the quality of the balls into the box and that sort of thing with the two goals that they scored in that first half. I think, as long as you're scoring and you're creating chances and you're putting those away, you can maybe get away with one or two defensive lapses, which I don't think are going to go away overnight, certainly. But yeah, Liverpool are scoring goals again, and that will hopefully mean that they can push themselves closer and closer to that Champions League place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most of the game was played against 10 men, and Newcastle from that point are always going to be damage limitation, aren't they? Ahead of a cup final. Don't get battered, I think, was their mindset. But I mean, Matt, the two goals came before Newcastle had the red card, and the attacking patterns, and we've not seen Liverpool attack like that, have we, in the first 20 minutes of a match for a very long time? It's so refreshing to see, isn't it? And the ball in from Trent Alexander-Arnold for the first one is simply sensational, isn't it?
Yeah, there was just so many of those, weren't there? I mean, him and Darwin Nunez is a kind of partnership that we've been hoping to see for a good while. I remember there was that tweet in the summer when he arrived that he said, "How may I assist you?" and then didn't do it for about 6 months. But he has started to build on that relationship. And I really, really like the look of the front three as it is. Obviously, Luis Diaz is still to come back. Jota and Firmino now to come off the bench for Liverpool. But I think that Salah, Gakpo and Nunez in that order, right to left, I think is just a really nice balance. I think Cody Gakpo is doing a lot of the things that Roberto Firmino did at his peak and knitting it all together. You've got Trent being able to spray those balls, like you say, from right to left into the path of Nunez. Hopefully, his shoulder injury isn't too much of a bad one for him and he can play a part on Tuesday night. But I think that's got to be the front three again. I think if all three of them are fit, you just stick with what it is. I think Real Madrid will have been watching that and possibly will have been a little bit wary, which if they'd watched Liverpool for the past few weeks, they probably would have been expecting to breeze through. But I think it's just that little bit of extra intensity. Obviously, St James's Park is an atmosphere which you've got to step up and be counted. But I think certainly on Tuesday as well at Anfield, that's going to be even better, even more ramped up. The pressing is going to be even more intense from Liverpool, and just that quality, the combinations. Mohamed Salah suddenly looking like a real playmaker again. I know he didn't score, but he was still one of those players that just cause problems. Obviously causes the panic for Nick Pope. He's brilliant with the passing to Cody Gakpo. There's just so many moments from him where you just think that's what Salah is at his best. Obviously, at his best, he gets the goals as well to add to that, and I'm sure that those will come sooner rather than later. But yeah, for all three of the forward players, I was really, really impressed. Darwin Nunez just really, really confident. I think that seems to be the change for me. He just didn't really have time to think about the shot when he scored. He just blasted it into the back of the net, which I think there's certainly lots of strikers that maybe would have took an extra touch or possibly would have tried to go around the goalkeeper or whatever, but he just hit it early. And obviously that's a good sign, I think, for someone like him. He does seem like one of those players that if he can act on instinct, he's probably a little bit better. So yeah, really, really good signs for Liverpool. Obviously, Real Madrid is another big step up, but we sat here and we did this show on Monday and said, well, Everton to Newcastle, completely different test. Liverpool did ultimately pass it. So, yeah, hopefully we can do the same on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me, that front three is a winning combination. It's probably the best combination we've seen so far this season, one you wouldn't change. We'll come on to Cody Gakpo after, but Matt, Nunez down the left, he's like a newborn player there, isn't he? He's so amazing. I mean, it's reminiscent of Sadio Mane in the sense that he's so direct, he's so powerful. Trent just seems to know exactly where he's going to be every time. Now, obviously, Liverpool have Jota, who can play down the left, Luis Diaz, who prefers playing on the left, Cody Gakpo is naturally a left winger. Do you think this could be a potential problem that Nunez is only effective on the left-hand side? Because he's not effective down the middle, but he's clearly far more effective on the left, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem right now, and I don't think Diogo Jota and Cody Gakpo. I think Gakpo ultimately is just going to play through the middle. I've seen enough now from him to think that that's his position really, and
it's
Diogo
probably Jota's future as well, isn't it, down the middle? Yeah.
Yeah, Jota can play both, can't he? And I think he's one of those players that it's kind of gone a little bit under the radar, but he's not scored since last April. He's not in the best of form. I don't think he's really in the conversation right now to start the game on Tuesday. I think the real interesting thing will be when Luis Diaz comes back. I think he's one that you'd expect. I mean, before he got injured in October, he was Liverpool's best player up to that point this season. So that's going to be the complication, I think. But I mean, what a problem that is to have. And when you've got so many options, you can maybe move to a front four at certain times. I'd certainly be interested in seeing that. I think there's still quite a big part of me that thinks Roberto Firmino ultimately will probably move on in the summer as well. Maybe that's one less option. Maybe it's a bit similar to what they did last season where Sadio Mane was leaving, so they obviously got Diaz in ahead of time. Possibly that's a similar situation with Gakpo, and that's what he's going to do with the Firmino type role. So yeah, it's one of those really. When everyone is fit, obviously it's a little bit of a headache, but it's a nice headache. And let's be honest, with Liverpool, how many times is that going to be the case that all of them are fit at the same time? I think with Liverpool, you've got to have that extra wriggle room, just because it's just not been the case this season. So yeah, it certainly could be a problem, but it's not a problem I'm going to be complaining about anytime soon.
Yeah, let's enjoy it while it lasts, because it's a very nice position to be in, and one that is quite rare for being a Liverpool supporter, I think, having that plethora of options. But I mean, Cody Gakpo as well, unbelievable again today, really impressing down the middle, isn't he? And he started scoring goals now as well, which is so important, because his first few games he was playing well, showing these signs, but didn't quite get the goals. Whereas now it seems like they're going to start flowing, doesn't it, in his new formed false nine position?
Yeah, I really like the look of him again there today. He was dropping really, really deep and doing the kind of Firmino things. When Firmino at his peak, that's what he did, isn't it? Sort of drop in and do those link-up bits, being able to carry the ball forwards as well. I think in a game against Newcastle or against Real Madrid or any team really that's going to put you under pressure, you need that kind of player that you can just give the ball to and they can just hold it for 10 seconds and not give it away and not let counter-attacks develop. And I just think that was a real big part of Liverpool's counter-attacking, but also the management of the game. When they get themselves 2-0 up, they can just give a player like Gakpo the ball and know that he's going to keep hold of it, which I think is massive. So yeah, it was again really good signs. I think if Liverpool can continue to develop those sorts of relationships, I think that's certainly the way that I would look at things moving forwards. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've spoken for so long about how do Liverpool evolve their forward line. I think right now the most effective thing is that you've got Darwin Nunez doing the Sadio Mane thing of sort of being a number 9 but from the left and scoring the goals. Obviously Salah is going to be heavily reliant on to score those goals from the right hand side. Cody Gakpo is doing the Firmino role, so it's almost like a bit of a revert back to what Liverpool were traditionally under Jurgen Klopp when they were at their peak. Obviously younger players, different players doing those roles, but the signs are good that they can be there, and it is. We know it's a winning formula. We know that if you can get a player who can play deep, you can have the two players wide either side that can score the goals primarily. That's great. And if Cody Gakpo can do what Firmino did in the season when he gets 28 and does all of that and ties it all together, then I think that suddenly becomes a real threat. And obviously then you've got the other options around them, which Firmino and Salah and Mane at their peak, it was just purely those three. Now, if it doesn't work, you've got Diaz, you've got Jota, Firmino for the rest of this season. There's, the evolution has come, perhaps as it stands at least, more in terms of the depth rather than the actual changes in positions and the way that Liverpool set up. But yeah, loads of stuff still to be worked out. Lots of development still, I think, for Darwin Nunez and Cody Gakpo can still get much better. But yeah, the combinations are starting to come, and I think it's a really important part of the season. If they can start scoring a couple of goals each each game. Suddenly that gives Liverpool a chance, and we know that the teams above them are inconsistent. We know that they will drop points. Chelsea have just lost at home to bottom of the table, Southampton. Liverpool now have capitalised, and suddenly there's a little bit of a gap there. So, yeah, it does all feel on at this moment in time, but things, as we know, can change very quickly. If Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez can continue scoring goals, though, they've got half a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. In the start of the year, Liverpool could barely score. And now in these newfound roles, the patterns they're playing, the transition, in and out of possession, the pressing is so much better with those three. Really, really promising signs from the Liverpool attack. And there are going to be way more goals in the second half of the season. I think that's a pretty obvious statement to make. But Matt, let's talk about the defence. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk came back into the side. A colossal addition, isn't he? I mean, he just makes everyone around him play so much better, having that aura of being Van Dijk. But Alisson Becker as well had a few phenomenal saves, didn't he? Because to be fair to Newcastle, even though they were with 10 men, they didn't let up attacking, and they did cause some problems. And I've seen, some mixed feelings on social media. Some are happy with the defensive display. Some are not so happy, given a side with 10 men had so many chances. What was your take on it? Because for me, I think it was a relatively decent display, given Newcastle are high-flying as such.
Yeah, I thought Newcastle played well. I know Miguel Almiron's been brilliant for them this season. I think St. Maximin was really impressive, and I just think it's one of those where you can argue it both ways. I think Liverpool should have been able to control the ball a little bit better in that second half. The midfield wasn't perfect. Fabinho maybe wasn't quite as good as what he was on Monday night. Jordan Henderson was good, but maybe wasn't quite as intense as he was in the Merseyside derby. So there's still a couple of bits that I think they've got to improve on. Stefan Bajcetic, of course, is still learning, and that will have been the biggest kind of a away game that he would have been involved in, I would have thought. So there's a few sorts of there's still a few holes, and there's still a few things that have got to be papered over. But when you've got a player in the kind of form that Alisson is in, he was absolutely brilliant. He saved Liverpool. I think was the 1-on-1 from Almiron, was that at 0-0 or 1-0?
It was 0-0, yeah.
Yeah, it was certainly early on in the game, and if that goes in, it's a completely different match, isn't it? It's just those big moments can go either way in these games, and yeah, I mean, you kind of run out of things to say really about Alisson, but you want Liverpool to be a little bit tighter. But for me, the most important thing really is at the other end of the pitch, they're starting to look a bit more like the normal selves again. It would be more of a worry, I think, if they weren't scoring and they were still making a couple of those mistakes. I think now there's just a little bit more room for leeway. So, yeah, Alisson was brilliant. He's going to have to be again, I'm sure, on Tuesday night. But it would be it'd be handy if Liverpool could turn it on defensively as well.
Yeah, as long as Liverpool keep scoring first in games as well, they'll be fine. That seems to be the trend this season, doesn't it? But as you say, Matt, roll on Real Madrid next. A massive, massive game for Liverpool on Tuesday night. It's going to be a huge one, that. And of course, there'll be another debrief show. But for now, after Liverpool beat Newcastle 2-0 away, they went from being 12 points off the top four. Next weekend, if everything goes well, there's a lot of ifs and buts in this, but they could find themselves in the top four all going well. I mean, it's baffling to say, isn't it, Matt? But for now, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on the debrief. My name is Patrick Smith, and I've been joined by Matt Addison. We'll catch you again soon.